So, Russell Findlay, leader of the Scottish Conservatives, welcome to a pre-election chat with the Scottish Sun.
It's good to be here.
I think it's been a couple of years since we've seen you.
Yeah.
I know you're about to head down south after being here and blitz the so-called blue wall across the borders. How's your vote holding up down there? That's where you really need to take some wins.
Solid. We're going on a grand tour of Scotland's blue wall.
Uh-huh.
We're going to go down to Stranraer, the forgotten corner of Scotland, where people are completely sick and tired of being failed by the SNP government. And then we'll head across the borders the following day and everywhere in between, cover as much ground as we possibly can.
Yeah.
This is what I like about campaigning. I'm not so much of a fan of some of the set-piece interview stuff. It's great to actually be out of that concrete bunker in Edinburgh and talking to real people.
You don't enjoy this then?
I prefer talking to real people.
Well, I'll ask you the question once we're off air as well, just to have after all of this as well. I was going to say, well, some of these interviews have seen party leaders more optimistic about their chances than perhaps you may be. I mean, the polls are suggesting you could even finish last in this Holyrood election, behind the Greens, the Lib Dems. How are you taking an election which is presumably a bit of a battering so far?
So I took on this job just over a year ago, but not even a year and a half, I don't think. And I did so just after the general election, where the Conservative Party suffered its worst result in history. So the idea that I'd walk into this job and everything would be fine and, that everything in the garden would be rosy was delusional. Nobody thought that. I didn't think that. I knew, as Kemi knew, because she came into the job just weeks after I did, that we had a long period of rebuilding what our party represents, reconnecting with those values that we should take pride in and we do take pride in, and crucially, using that to show people that we can be trusted, especially in the economy. And that isn't going to be a quick fix. This Scottish election has come round very quickly, and we have done an extraordinarily good job for 10 years plus holding the SNP to account. So if you look at Holyrood and you look at the Labour, Lib Dems, Greens, more often than not, they row in behind the SNP. And we're the pantomime villains in that place because we stand up to them, whether it's on their high taxes, their high benefits, gender self-ID, you name it, we are on the right side of public opinion and we stand up to SNP. But it is going to be a tough election. Nobody's denying that. And that's why it's critical that I'm out there speaking to people, reminding them of our track record at Holyrood and reminding them if they want to stop an SNP majority, if they want a solid opposition to the SNP, to use that peach ballot paper to back the Scottish Conservatives.
You talk about rebuilding the party. I mean, by the looks of things, you're going to have it torn down by voters in order to start that process.
Well, I think if you look at the general election result, that's kind of what happened. We suffered a terrible result. In Scotland, it's slightly flattered to deceive in that we went into that election with 6 MPs and came out with 5, which was a terrific result. But there was a lot going on. Reform were on the pitch at that point, and they really, really frustrate me because they appear to be able to get away with by being all things to all people. So they tell everyone they're unionists, but the evidence suggests they're not, or they don't really mean it. They pretend they're economically conservative, but then you look at some of their proposals, the numbers just don't add up, and they want to keep benefit spending as it is, which we know isn't affordable. So I think it will take time. It will take time for people to realise that we are credible, we're responsible, we're on the side of people across the United Kingdom, and indeed in support of the United Kingdom, whereas reform will be found wanting when that scrutiny starts to be applied.
There's a lot of commentary about this election. We're looking at turnout potentially being low. I'd be surprised if it topped 50% if half of the country voted. It's been talked up as a loveless election. I think commentators have called it the meh factor. The favourite word of all of the politicians is scunnered. The Tories have to take their share of the blame for that partly, don't they? Given the record in Westminster, never mind Holyrood. That's part of the reason the country is is because of the record of the Conservative UK government.
Yeah, I think you are right. I think both Kemi and I have been completely honest about that. We've owned it. We've held our hands up and we've been contrite, not in a performative way, but because we've seen where things have gone wrong. But I think when Labour came in promising change, and that was an absolute disaster almost from the beginning, little wonder so many people thought, is that it? You know, and they felt completely switched off. It cements this idea of what's the point. But, you know, I remember as a younger person, I didn't always vote, and I didn't feel particularly interested in what some of these parties were, you know, what the messages were. But it's so important. I would encourage anyone who's out there who's not engaged to cast that vote, even if you're not fully across all the details. Just look at what party chimes with you.
Yeah.
And if you want a party that's going to stand up for people who go and work for a living, if you want a party that will support business, not treat it as the enemy, because business is the lifeblood of the economy, and if you want a party that will be, you know, on the right side of some of these more extreme ideas, whether it be the Green Party wanting to legalise crack cocaine and heroin, or the SNP saying that all men can be women and vice versa at the stroke of a pen, you know, we are the right party for you.
I was going to ask you right at the end to do 20 seconds to tell people why they're going to vote for you.
All right, okay.
But I think you've done
Happy
that for me. I mean, some of your critics suggest that you have very little interest in being in the job that you're in, and arguably barely any interest in being a politician. What would you say to them?
Not true. I mean,
The smile suggests otherwise.
But I think what people mistake is because I've not climbed up the political greasy pole for my entire life. Like, take someone like Humza Yousaf, who's never, as far as I know, had a job in the real world, or Ross Greer. They come into politics as, you know, to work for a politician, become a politician, and know nothing else but politics. So the fact that I've got that background of not being involved in politics doesn't mean I'm not interested in it. I wouldn't be doing it if I wasn't interested in it. I was motivated for a number of reasons. One, I was sick to death of the constitutional paralysis of the SNP, the way in which nationalism has put Scotland in this sort of paralysis.
You're campaigning at this election almost entirely on the Constitution.
Well, that's because you've got a First Minister, John Swinney, who said the first thing he will do is put a vote to the Parliament
but it works
on another
it works
referendum.
as well for you guys as it does the SNP to have this election about India.
But we're the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party. You can't trust Reform, you can't trust Labour, you can't trust Lord Dems on the Union, so we will talk about it. But I get into politics partly due to the SNPs, the way in which they've trashed Scotland, partly due to the fact that as a journalist writing a lot about justice issues, sometimes for a couple of years for the Scottish Sun, there's that frustration that when you try and write about something and you think that might change things and it doesn't, you think, well, maybe politics is a better vehicle in which to do so.
Is it better than journalism?
It can be really effective. One thing I'm really, really proud of is, as a politician, in the 5 years I've been an MSP, is I've acted for lots of people who have suffered either a horrific loss through whether it be violent crime, or subject to violent crime themselves, or have suffered at the hands of the justice system. And the power MSPs have to highlight cases and to make a change for people. I don't think many MSPs get that. I think they think, because of my background, I understand how the justice system and how the system works, whereas a lot of them, I think, look at that and it all becomes a little bit too daunting, or a bit... It's not a simple join the dots. So
I mean, let's. I completely understand what you mean. I mean, but let's look forward a little bit for post the election, and actually election day itself. There is a non-zero chance that you don't come back at all at this election, particularly if Jackson Carlo wins.
This is a new phrase, a non-zero chance.
I don't know what the opposite.
Right?
Is there a better phrase?
No. There is a chance.
There is a chance. Very good. Well, I'm famous for saying you're not wrong instead of you're right. So there you go. And there is a chance that you don't come back at all.
Is there?
If Jackson,
there's a chance that everyone standing doesn't come back.
Sure, but if Jackson Carlo wins in Eastwood and you don't do very well on the list, it could be curtains for Russell Findlay. And you don't come back.
What, one poll somewhere?
Several pollsters.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
you're not worried about that?
No, I'm not worried. I mean, unlike some of the people I've mentioned already, Ross Greer springs to mind. I will survive perfectly well in the real world, whereas I think if Ross Greer collided with the real world, he might come off second best.
What about if you do end up 5th or 6th at this election and you do end up behind the Lib Dems and the Greens, do you stay on as leader?
Well, see, this is all the ifs and buts about whether I come back, where we end up. It is all speculation. And one thing about political journalists, if you don't mind me saying, the football journalists out there write about the result and analyse the result after the match. The political journalists want to analyse the match before it's even been played.
Well, we ask these questions because we like to keep politicians to their word. So we ask you guys about all of these things. So
I'm not planning to go anywhere. I'm the leader. I was put in charge a year and a half ago.
So you'll fight the next election?
Well, I was put in charge a year and a half ago. Was told by the membership the party needed to change. Kemi and I are doing that. It's going to take some time. Now, if I thought after the election that I couldn't make a material difference, that I was an impediment to improving our fortunes, I would go. But I don't see that happening. My full intention is to see this out and to turn the corner and to bring the Scottish Conservatives back to where they should be. So
Russell Findlay will be fighting the 2031 Holyrood election, Scottish Tory leader?
If it's up to me, yes.
Let's talk about your manifesto for a bit. And you've already mentioned justice in things that you're proud about. One of the things that I thought was interesting in your manifesto was this idea of sending prisoners abroad in order to help the prison crisis. Have you spoken to any justice secretaries of foreign countries to sort this out yet?
No. This is a classic example of opposition parties being held to higher standards than the government. You know, when John Swinney says he's going to legislate prices in supermarkets, everyone goes, all right, John, that's fine. But he's actually the First Minister of Scotland. This is a credible idea. I don't need to have spoken to the Estonian Justice Secretary to know it's a credible idea because there's already examples of it happening. And if you put your mind to it, if the will is there, it is perfectly achievable. If you look at what happened during COVID, suddenly prisons were unable to take visitors in. Humza Yousaf at that point decided to spend £6 million of taxpayers' cash on free mobile phones for prisoners, which were then used to commit crimes. So you can actually look at things differently, because what is absolutely unacceptable is the fact that SNP's default position now is releasing thousands of prisoners before they've done their time, knowing they're going to commit war crimes. So what, do we just accept that as a status quo, or do we come up with credible ideas to stop it?
You're against particularly foreign criminals immigrating to the UK. You want to emigrate for our criminals to other countries. These people aren't going to agree to that.
No, they're going to be locked up. They're not going to get sent off to roam the streets of Tallinn. They'll be in a prison.
They might not have the space themselves.
Well, that would be the agreement, you know. You're not just going to put them in an EasyJet and hope for the best. There would be an agreement.
So let's talk about the other big aspects, or one of the big aspects, which is massive income tax cuts and business rate changes. I think it's to the tune of about 3.7 billion a year by 2031. How are you going to pay for that? That's a massive commitment.
Well, so our manifesto uniquely is costed. I know the IFS have said positive things about the manifesto and they've questioned some of it. But
they say it's far from clear whether it would survive contact with reality.
Sure, but if you look at they also welcomed the fact that we put costings in there. What they said about, for example, Reform UK's manifesto is the numbers were a mirage. You know, it's a starkly different assessment. And we are confident that if you look at the tax cuts, we can achieve savings through cutting some of the monumental, wasteful spending of the SNP.
Can you highlight exactly what you mean by that? Because one of the frustrations in this election campaign is, I think every party talks about cutting quangos apart from maybe the Greens.
Well,
which ones? Who goes? What service levels?
Before we get to quangos, see just in terms of spending, if you look at the way in which the SNP said this prison is going to cost 100 million, the new Berlini is going to cost $1 billion, and that's partly due, or in large part due to the fact they're more interested in making it a net zero prison than actually just a functional prison that keeps the public safe by locking up dangerous people. So that's a huge waste of money, £1 billion for a new prison. We would not, it doesn't bear thinking about how you can spend almost £500 million on two dodgy ferries that will never be right. So there's huge amounts of things that could be done better with public money. In terms of the quangos, there's Community Justice Scotland, get rid, Scottish Land Commission, no need for them. There's 2 architectural quangos, merge them. CMAL, you don't need that, merge it with CalMac. There are other examples. So we have been clear, whereas again, comparing with Reform, they've said they'll just get rid of, I think they said at one point they get rid of 130. That's all the public bodies. Now, we're not suggesting that. And then you get to the benefit system.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where inevitably we're being mischaracterised and misrepresented. Everybody can see that Scotland's benefits bill is too big right now. It's 7 billion quid. It's going to hit 10 billion pounds by the end of the decade. We can't afford it. It's been paid for by people who go work for a living. It's been paid for through taxing businesses, and the economy is stagnating. We need to get a grip of the benefits bill, and we would cut benefits.
But your manifesto says on the benefits bill that you'd make particularly the mental health rules around adult disability payment more stringent. I think that saves around 1.8 billion, which the IFS says is around a third of the current spending on ADP. 40% of ADP is spent on mental health conditions. That suggests that you don't take people with depression and with these issues seriously. I mean, these people can't work or might need extra help.
We take this deadly seriously. That's why it needs to be fixed, because those who do need it.
So it's not just the nasty party back.
We want to protect benefits for those who need it. This is one of the great things about living in this country, is that we've got a safety net for you or I or anyone who might need it. It's about ensuring that the right people get it. You just have to look at the former SNP candidate who was standing for an election, who was living this kind of Instagram lifestyle, who appeared perfectly fine in terms of the way she went about her life. And it transpired, because someone in the SNP stuck her in, that she'd received £20,000 of benefits that she wasn't entitled to.
Sally Donald obviously stringently denies that she's done anything wrong.
Yeah, she denies that she's done anything wrong, but it's reported as fact that she was not entitled to these benefits. And now, to you, to I, to everyone watching this, £20,000 in your hand from the state is a huge sum of money. We want the right people to get the benefits, and I think it's perfectly reasonable. I think Scottish Sun readers would understand and accept that if you claim a benefit for a mental health disorder, that you need to get a medical diagnosis. You can't just self-declare to someone on the end of a phone at Social Security Scotland and potentially end up getting that benefit. And then when some of these benefits are being renewed, it's literally a tick box exercise. So you just are asked, have your circumstances changed? Now, if you're getting some money from the state, the temptation to tick that box and keep taking the money is obvious. It's human nature. So we want to just bring in a medical diagnosis. And also, even if you qualify for the benefit in terms of a diagnosis, do you need that money to live your life? That should be a factor too.
You're making the decision, or the choice, the political choice, to hand money to well-off pensioners with things like the winter fuel payment and aspects of that, and punish people with mental health conditions.
Well, I don't agree with this punishment. If people have got a mental health condition that impacts their ability to work, they will get the benefit. If they've got a mental health condition that doesn't impede in their lives in any meaningful way, doesn't affect their ability to earn, why should the state pay that money out? The pot of money is finite. We have to be really quite stringent.
That's a fair point, but let's go back to what you're talking about in terms of cuts to back office staff, etc. I'll just pull out a quote from the IFS again that says that I think it's £4 billion of cuts in your manifesto. They say that's not credible without, quote, cuts to the range and quality of services provided to the residents of Scotland.
Well, again, they have assessed all the manifestos, and
that's this assessment of yours.
Yeah, but
let's talk about yours rather than anyone else's. For now.
No, I know, but I think that when you look at them side by side, what they've said about us, they're questioning whether some of this is achievable.
Not credible. That's not achievable. That's not credible.
They question it. They don't say it's not credible.
If you were a journalist and you saw those words, you'd jump on that as much as I have.
Yeah. No, but they're questioning it. They're not saying, they're going back to Reform. They're not saying this is a mirage. They're not saying this is not credible. They're questioning whether it would be.
Saying this is not credible.
They're questioning it, though. I think you'd give me that, wouldn't you?
No, they're saying without cuts to the range and quality of services provided to the residents of Scotland, which you then do not go on in your manifesto to outline. So either you
But
must
we,
do
but
that,
we
or
can
it's not credible.
sometimes disagree with that assessment, can't we? I mean, if you look at the savings we were proposing and the efficiencies we were proposing and the cuts to benefits collectively, coupled with an expectation that if you make life better for business, if you reduce taxation, that in turn leads to greater investment by businesses, more employment opportunities, and a growing of the tax yield, then I disagree. I think we can do that.
All right, let's move on to IndyRef. I know we covered it a little bit already, but you claim Nigel Farage is soft on independence for floating the prospect of IndyRef by, I think, 2039. Basically a generation since 2014. That's a pretty long way away, 13 years. Is the Tory position now in Scotland never, ever again, no matter what?
We're a unionist party. It seems we're probably the only true unionist party. We have seen the damage done to Scotland by a government in Edinburgh obsessed with breaking up the United Kingdom. We want to say no unequivocally. We want the government to get on with the day job. We want to give people a break. And then when you have people like Nigel Farage, who I believe has no regard for the union and frankly will say anything from day to day, and Lord Alford will have to just ultimately accept whatever Nigel Farage says about it, they can't be trusted. I mean, even when I've questioned Lord Alford directly about this, he's fielding pro-independence candidates. He said to me in question time, well, there's only 3 of them. Then he said last night...
And we know all this. It's been well covered. What is the Tory position? Is it never, ever again, no matter what?
As far as I'm concerned,
even if it's 70%
we're a
for
unionist
yes
party.
in the polls.
Look,
but there's a difference between being a unionist party who will argue for the union and a unionist party that accepts that there is a route to independence
it's
available.
not my job to provide a route map to a referendum. That's for the nationalist parties to work out, or indeed Lord Alford's produced such a blueprint.
But
I'm not interested.
You view the question as settled for good.
As far as I'm concerned, yeah. We said no respectfully and decisively in 2014.
So regardless of the will of the people of Scotland, even if in 20, 30 years
again,
the polls shift, your position would still be no.
We're getting into hugely hypothetical territory. It's hypothetical enough talking about an election in a week's time, let alone what Scotland might look like in 20 or 30 years.
I think people who are voting
I'll
for you
be
on...
dodging about the stick. You know what I mean?
People who are voting for you on the basis of your constitutional position would be interested to know, is it no for good or is it just no for now?
Well, look, as I say, it's all hypothetical. I can't speak for what a theoretical position might be decades to come. I mean, that would be, pointless, wouldn't it?
So, you spent your life fighting criminal gangs and organised crime as a journalist.
Yeah. Well, not entirely my whole life, but yeah.
You know what I mean. But you'll know bad behaviour when you see it. How often have you seen it in Parliament?
Bad behaviour? Not often.
What about your own party?
Yeah. No, not often. No.
There were reports just before Parliament dissolved that the Tory party leadership swept complaints about one of your own MSPs under the carpet. Did you? Completely
false. And we've actually put a complaint into your sister title, the Times newspaper, who reported erroneously to that effect. And I've just come out of a meeting with the editor, in fact, because it was completely wrong.
Completely wrong?
Completely.
So the open secret of who it is in Holyrood circles is nonsense? We can't name him for legal reasons, but...
There has been a number of factors at play. Any information that I or our party has of any wrongdoing, I can say hand on heart will be dealt with properly and has been dealt with properly. And I take this hugely seriously. And I think there have been some attempts by people whose motives I question, which has caused this slightly scurrilous rumour mill type stuff going on. But I know I have complete confidence that what we have done has been correct.
So why not just kick off an investigation, a review of the handling of issues in the past, just to make sure that all the I's have been dotted and all the T's have been crossed?
Why would we give substance or validity to something that we know does not have substance? I've also raised concerns about some of this directly with the Parliament over some of what they've put into a report, which we knew to be false, if indeed the report relates to a member of our party. which the report isn't clear. So there's lots of stuff swirling around, but I'm absolutely confident that we've done everything by the book.
So you think there are MSPs going around chatting to journalists about this stuff that they've just made up to make your life harder?
No, nobody's saying that.
So where's the source of this come from?
I mean, I've heard stories about MSPs from other parties, and as a journalist, you know better than anyone, and we know that you have to be absolutely certain of your facts, and they need to be stood up properly. You know, the amount of times as a journalist you get information and it turns out to be complete and utter nonsense. That part of a journalist's job, as much as proving something, is disproving it. And yeah, so that is often what happens. I know, I mean, I'm not going to get into speculating about other politicians and other parties, but if I believed some of these stories, if I took them at face value, I wouldn't do that. I'd be wrong.
Well, just a complete change of topic. What do you make of Liz Truss's career choices since she left Westminster? You once thought she was an economic genius.
What's she up to?
Well, she seems to be Trump-aligned and
when
speaking
did I
things.
say that? What? I reckon she was a what?
Economic genius. I might be paraphrasing.
Yeah, exactly.
You certainly backed her plans for when she was Prime Minister.
Look, when she was running to be leader, it was a 2-horse race, and I backed the wrong horse, and I've held my hands up. You know, John Swinney might eventually apologise for putting Hamza Yusuf into Bute House, but this idea that, you know, I mean, she was a disaster. I mean, I've got one house and I've got one mortgage, and I know the impact that had. She tarnished our party, and we are paying the price for that, and have paid the price for that.
Well, let's look a little bit further forward. There's obviously you've attacked Malcolm Offord, you've attacked Reform in this interview, so we won't go over that again. But there are rumours in Westminster that criticised,
questioned
that that in the long term, Reform will replace the Conservatives as the right wing party of opposition. Up until that, who would you rather see as Prime Minister? Ed Miliband or Andy Burnham or Nigel Farage, on the assumption that everyone doesn't last that long?
Oh, is it that you've kept the daft questions till the end?
Absolutely.
So what's the choice?
So you can have Ed Miliband or Andy Burnham or Nigel Farage, given we assume Sir Keir Starmer won't last that long.
It might not surprise you to know that I'm going to pick Kennedy.
Oh, she's not an option, Russell. I'm sorry, she's not written down.
Well, I'm afraid she will be an option, no matter your ridiculous predictions.
Would you prefer a Labour government or a Reform one?
Academic. Not interested. A Tory government all day long. We need to. If you look at Labour have made a complete mess of the economy. I mean, I think the most damaging policy of the Labour government has been the national insurance increase. It's jobs tax. Every single business person that I've spoken to, small, medium and large, knows the figure that this has put on their bottom line. And in many cases, it's about inability to hire, inability to invest. And in other cases, it's about inability to even continue. It's absolutely catastrophic. So that's what Labour represent. Nigel Farage, the guy's a one-trick pony, he's a one-man band. I don't believe he's a unionist. I believe he's an English nationalist. I think he'll lose interest in this. And I think eventually, quickly, hopefully, people will see that the Conservatives in Scotland and UK-wide are the right option.
I'll just pick up you. So you think the Labour government's record in Westminster is terrible, obviously. Come May the 11th or whenever Parliament votes in the next First Minister, Anna Sarwar was on the TV debate last night on STV, seemingly trying to shore up support from the Liberal Democrats. Would you back him as First Minister if it was a straight choice between him and John Swinney?
See, I don't really want to be an honest friend in there. What I've said, and all I'm going to say is, I will not back an SNP First Minister, an SNP government.
Do you abstain or do you vote for Anna Sarwar?
We've had 20 years of the SNP making Scotland worse.
This is a live question, Russ.
It's a live question, but
do you back Annas or do you abstain?
Well, no, but to do that would just be to sort of almost concede it. There's 7-8 days, just over a week until the election, and I want people to know that I'm fighting for every vote, fighting for every seat.
But you are going to be one of those parties whose votes in the Parliament will decide who the next First Minister is. Who are you backing? Anna Sarwar, or are you just not voting?
Maybe Anas will back me. We'll wait and see. It's all to play for.
That's not the situation I'm providing you with. Go on. Are you abstaining or are you backing Anas?
We will have to wait and see. I'm not going to get into a post-election prediction. It's a bit like the point I made earlier about the football hacks. At least wait until after the match has been played before working out what went right and what went wrong, instead of trying to look ahead like Cassandra to see what's going on.
All right. Well, last question for you, Russell, and I'll time you on this one as well if I can. 20 seconds you've got to pitch
20 seconds,
your party to Scottish Sun readers and why they should vote for you.
Not looking at the camera, looking at
Whatever
you.
you're
Right,
asking.
okay. So we are the party who will always stand up for the union, unlike Reform UK. We have stood up against the SNP at Holyrood when no other party could or would. And we are on the side of both hardworking taxpayers and Scotland's businesses, because we understand that the only way to pay for public services is through a growing economy.
Good. That was closer to 20 seconds. Alex Cole Hamilton. Russell Findlay, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Good luck.